Welcome to the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee. As we always do at the start of this committee, whenever we gather, we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional Aboriginal people of the land on which we gather, and we acknowledge their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as the Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Awesome. Let's get this show on the road. I think we have everyone here. Yeah, we do. Councillor Castro, it's such a pleasure to have you here. We didn't want to start without you. Thanks to everyone for coming. There are no leaves of absence, and we might move on to the confirmation of the minutes. No, we're not going to confirm the minutes today. All right, okay. Well, the minutes will be moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Castro. So close to lapsing. I don't know what happens if we don't move the minutes. It's just some sort of lightning strikes the building or something. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Is there any conflict of interest declarations today? No? Great. The forward planning schedule is there. It's a start item, and there is one other start item, which is the local government funding request for red imported fire ants. It's really just an administrative process to make sure that we're included in an LGAQ action. Did anyone come here today and want to talk about fire ants? So I reckon we might move the start items, which would be the forward planning schedule and that item 6.5. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, Chair. There were a couple of questions just around the fire ants thing. It won't take very long.
So no, that's great. So we will unstart item 6.5. Can I get a mover for the forward planning schedule? Councillor Wilkinson keeping us moving. Councillor Doran lifted his little finger, and we're going to count that as a second. All those in favour? So good. That motion is carried. All right. Let's kick our presentations off today. As we have been doing since the election, every one of these committees, we've tried to incorporate a presentation about some of the general business of ordinary business of this department, and to keep councillors informed about that body of work. And today we've got a report about the Safe City Survey, and we've also got presentations about libraries, pests, the junior council and youth programs. So it's a full schedule. But I'm going to throw to Matt.
Thank you. Through the chair. Good morning, committee members. I'm Matt Werner, Manager Public Safety Compliance. We have Anna Rainbow, Coordinator Community Safety, with us today. We're going to go through the recent Safe City Survey results, some of the rationale behind why we've seen a bit of a decline in the results, and then where we want to take things moving forward. First slide there is around our council plan. So in June 2022, council adopted the council plan you can see there in front of you, which is the outcomes the council are going to deliver for our community. In there, under the vibrant lifestyle theme, we have an outcome: we're a safe, active and healthy community. And the way we're measuring the success of the safety component of that outcome is through the perceptions of safety, which this survey, the Safe City Survey, is our data source for that. Specifically, perceptions of safety, what we're measuring here is how safe our community feel in their neighbourhoods. And we'll get to some of the results and looking at the trend of that quite shortly. I'm just going to hand over to Anna, who's going to talk through some of the stats from our survey.
Good morning, everyone. So the survey for 2024, we had an excellent response rate. So you can see on the screen there, 4,723 responses altogether, which is an increase compared to the 2021 survey. And it's actually the highest response rate for any city survey last financial year. So a great result, and really demonstrates how important safety is to our community. In terms of the profile of respondents, 90% live on the Gold Coast. The other 10% were visitors to the city or own businesses here. In terms of male and female responses, we had a higher proportion of females with 61%, 36% male, and the remaining 3% preferred not to indicate. We have had a look at the reasoning behind the higher response rate from females. There's some research to suggest that potentially females have a higher perception of risk and also might be just generally more inclined to participate in surveys. In terms of the age profile of respondents compared to our Gold Coast population, you can see on the graph there the red lines are our respondents and the blue lines are the comparison with population. So quite consistent. The younger two age brackets, we excluded under 15 years, but the younger two age brackets up to that 34 years were underrepresented. All the junior counsellors filled out the survey, which was great, but in future years we'd like to target that younger age group. The majority of respondents were between that 45 to 64 years. In terms of the spread across the city, really well aligned with where our population resides. So highest response rate from Central, but again, that's in line with our population numbers. So 40% from Central Gold Coast, followed by the North, South, and then West. And in terms of the top 10 suburbs for where our respondents came from, you can see the list on the screen, but Surfers Paradise, followed by Robina, and then Southport.
Excellent. Thanks, Anna. All right, let's look into some of the actual results from the survey. So we ask a range of questions with a Safe City survey. One of the key questions we ask is, how safe do you feel in your neighbourhood? It's a like-hard style question, so we'll give a statement. For example, I feel safe in my neighbourhood, and then the respondents will either answer strongly agree, neutral, or through to strongly disagree. So what we saw with how safe people feel in their neighbourhood is 61% of people strongly agree or agree with that statement. A further 20% were neutral, so they weren't either positive or negative. That's the grey colour there. And about 19% or 1 in 5 don't feel safe in their neighbourhood. That has dropped since 2021 by about 11.7%, and we'll go through the reasons or the drivers behind that change shortly. As you can see there, feeling safe during the day is obviously going to be higher than night. 4 in 5 people feel safe during the day in their neighbourhood, which is a great result, and a further 13% were neutral for that response. And then 40% feel safe in their neighbourhood at night, and about 36% or 1 in 3 don't feel safe at night at their neighbourhood.
Can I just clarify before we go on? In 2021, lots of people were just in their houses.
Yeah. We'll get
so
to
as we kind of talk about the results and the reductions in perceptions of safety in 2020, 2021, we were in COVID lockdown, where there wasn't people moving around. There were significant restrictions on movement. So I'm just
through the chair. Yes, spot on. We'll get to. There's about 5 drivers here we want to talk about. Timing is exactly one of them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
good.
So we'll just run through a few other key results, then we'll get onto those drivers. In terms of perceptions of safety on the Gold Coast, 48% of people feel safe on the Gold Coast, about 1 in 2. And then there's a further 24% which were neutral, so an opportunity to move those into the agree category moving forward. And during the day and during the night, as you can see there, are quite reflective of what we saw in the neighbourhood. So people feel safe during the day, but there's some opportunity there at night time. Just a couple of other key results. We're not going through everything in the survey, just a few of the key results here. In terms of public transport, 52% feel safe on public transport during the day, and about a further, in front of me here, 27% are neutral. So 4 in 5 people feel safe or a bit neutral for public transport during the day. And then in terms of public transport at night, we're seeing very similar results to 2021. So about 16% of people feel safe on public transport at night. That was 18% back in 2021. So a very minor change there. In terms of those who have witnessed crime on the Gold Coast, we have seen an increase from our survey. So in 2021, 32% of people have witnessed crime on the Gold Coast. That's risen by 6% to 38%. That may be a reason. Actual crime is one of our drivers of perceptions of safety. Those who have witnessed crime in their neighbourhood is actually higher than on the Gold Coast. So 41% of people elected that they have witnessed crime in their neighbourhood, and we'll get to the reasons why shortly. And then one of the key actions or activities Council delivers to support community safety is our safety camera network. We took a few of the councillors through there the other week so you could see the full scale and operation of that particular service. 54% of respondents feel that CCTV increases perceptions of safety on the Gold Coast, and a further 26 were unsure. So we've got a good opportunity through some proactive comms there to get those people who are unsure or don't feel it improve safety into that improved area. Oh, I've lost the clicker. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Another question we ask is select your top 3 safety concerns for the Gold Coast. We list a range of different concerns here in another category as well. The top 5 from our responses were number 1, 53% of responses selected break-in and enter-in or robbery/break-in, followed by car theft, antisocial behaviour, driver behaviour, and then drug use. There was a bit of a change since 2021. We did split the Hoonin response. We had This the 2021 survey, we just had a Hoon-in response, but this time we split it to Hoon-in and driver behaviour, speed in another. We just wanted to see what the perceptions were from our community. Hoon-in came in at number 6 in the top safety concerns. This posed a question to the team around, well, what does the actual offence data from QPS look like and link into these particular concerns? If we can, oh, there we go. So what we've done is had a look at the top safety concerns against the offence counts on the Queensland Crime Data website and looked at the growth of those offences against the top 5 safety concerns. We had a hypothesis that maybe the growth in offence counts or the highest offence counts might link to our top 5. Unfortunately, the data didn't support that. So there's no direct correlation between top safety concerns or perceived safety concerns and crime data. Just some examples on the screen here that you can see. Drug use was number 1 back in 2021, the number 1 concern for our residents. It's dropped to number 5 this year, but as you can see, the data, the second last and third last columns there show the offences of the years of the survey. So drug use has risen by about 41% in that time and about 9,000 or so offences. But yet, even though there's that rise, it's dropped down the perceptions list.
And keeping in mind that during a time where everyone's in their houses, there's obviously less police prosecuting drug crime.
Yeah, correct.
Or, vehicle-related crime because no one's in their car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what this says to us...
It's helpful to see, but it's also important to have some perspective.
Perspective as well, yeah, correct. So what this has told us is there are multiple drivers of perceptions of safety. So actual crime is one of the key drivers. If you're experiencing crime, your family, your friends are, that is going to impact your perceptions of safety. But there are other drivers. So online social media forums have become really good sources to share information in neighbourhoods about crime and antisocial behaviour. An example we have is there's one community group on the Gold Coast with over 40,000 residents, and if you go through the feed of that social media group, there's consistent posts from residents about stolen cars, breaking and entering, and other crime or antisocial behaviour, which is not a bad thing. It just means people are getting that information more frequently now. So that would impact perceptions of safety, and those avenues and communication tools can be used for positive stories as well. In terms of media influence, what people are seeing and hearing on a day-to-day basis in the news, the radio, on the newspaper is going to impact their perceptions of safety, again, both from a positive or a negative perception. And during the survey period, there were stories linking to our top 5 safety concerns. So we did have a look. There were stories about breaking and entering, stolen vehicles, gendered violence, and more. So the media do have a role to play in perceptions of safety. Timing, we've briefly mentioned timing. So the 2021 survey was smack bang in the middle of COVID. So we had the travel restrictions, the border restrictions and more. There's no doubt there that would increase perceptions of safety for residents as we've completed that survey. And it's worth noting that during the current survey that we completed in April, we did have some significant stories across Australia, in particular Bondi Junction knife incident, which again may have impacted people's responses to this survey. And finally, just the last one to mention there is population growth. So a growing city, as we all know, would continue to increase, potentially increase crime on the Gold Coast. A couple more slides and we'll open up for questions. The council endorsed a community safety program back in July 2023. It's a comprehensive program that shows that the city do a lot in the community safety space. So we've got about 17 projects that we're working on at the moment to enhance community safety, and there's a range of BAU activities or services the city delivers to support community safety, from disaster management to the road safety program, our safety audits, and more. So the city is doing a lot in this space. There are 2 key opportunities that have come up through this survey that we want to do some further work on and come back to council. The first one is reviewing the measure of success. So the perceptions of safety measure is a fantastic measure. We do want to continue to understand what our community is saying, but it's very difficult from a city, as you saw from all the drivers there, it's very difficult to understand what our role is in perceptions of safety and if what we're doing is actually moving the dial in the right way. So what we'd like to do is do some further research on that measure and complement the perceptions of safety measure maybe with some other quantitative measures that really tell us that what we're doing as a city is improving community safety. We do want to continue to do this survey. It gives us fantastic insights to how the community are thinking and feeling about community safety. The second opportunity is to review our role in community safety. So that would be, while we're a year into that community safety program, we want to do our due diligence and look at, are we doing the right things? We want to benchmark with other local governments, look at best practice initiatives across Australia and worldwide, And is there more or different things we could do in that space, which is something we'd like to bring back to Council in January. So, yeah, final slide, just to finalise on the recommendations in the report. So just asking the committee and Council to note the results. Just recommending that we'll do that review of the measure of success in line with the next Council plan review, and we'll bring that back to Council. And then finally, we'll do a piece of work over the next few months to look at our role in community safety. We'll engage with our stakeholders and partners through the Safer Suburbs Forum. We'll engage with councillors and teams across the city, and we'll work with other local governments to look at, are we doing all the right things to enhance community safety?
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
One final thing, sorry, if I can. We can, actually, Anna, you're right to hand out that information. So we've been working with our corporate communications team, and we have the ability to break down the data by division. So we haven't quite finished it yet. It's something we're looking to finish in the next 2 weeks. Here's an example of something we've done for Division 9. But we just wanted to ask councillors if you'd be keen to see that data broken down by your division. Just noting the sample size is not enough for it to be a statistically valid sample, and that some suburbs across 2 divisions will be included in your overall results. So Burleigh Waters, for example, covers 2 divisions. You'll get all Burleigh Waters in your results.
So when we did the report and the briefing for the committee, I asked for some data to be provided just on a divisional basis so we could talk today about whether you as divisional councils would be interested in, and that was probably the only concern that we kind of had. In some of those divisional reports, you'll get some of the respondents are from outside your division, particularly if you share a suburb name with something with someone else. But I thought we'd just bring again an example today and talk about it. Before we move on to that, though, actually let's talk about that first, and we'll come back to other questions after. Councillor Gates.
Chairman, I'm not here for very long, but if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to make a comment about this in terms of the responses that we've received and the media coverage in the political cycle that we are now in, because there has been a huge focus on youth crime in particular and crime. And whilst I've never seen a crime committed, or I'm really not afraid of crime in my local area, I think that the coverage has been so consistent for such a long period of time that it's probably played a major role in the type of responses that we've received. I don't know, is there any... I mean, the Mayor's Community Safety Committee, the figures provided to us by the Police Commissioner are not reflective of an increase and haven't been over a period of time. So it's just a bit disappointing to see these survey results from my perspective, when I think we've worked hard to create an atmosphere where people can feel safe in this city and should feel safe in this city. I know police numbers are down. That's not something that we can directly impact, but I think that the team is doing a great job in the space. So I wanted to just mention that before I leave this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gates. I'm going to go Councillor Curtis and Councillor Wilkinson after that.
Mine's more commentary than question. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah.
Yep. So sort of off the back of what the acting mayor's just disclosed, I share the sentiment. So I'd be very happy to move this one, and particularly that item 2 about working for a fit for purpose measure, because I feel like people's perceptions is not a fair or reasonable metric to see how the council's performing in that role. And I did just want to draw attention, because I just quickly jumped on for lockdowns, because that did become part of what we were discussing with what the perceptions might have been in 2021. But for the Gold Coast, according to the data here, we only had one 3-day lockdown and one 8-day lockdown over 2021. So I don't think the lockdowns were maybe like as pronounced for us and probably didn't influence the changes. But certainly if we reflect back what was happening in 2020, that was domestic violence was huge, and that was the media coverage of the day, and that's definitely reflected in your data, where it looked like it was 2/3 more of a concern in 2020, and I thought when I looked back at some of the media coverage from 2020, 2021, that's where the focus was. So I'm keen to move when we get to it.
When we're ready, yeah, absolutely. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, my questions are more, I've got just a couple, but they're mostly around future engagement and looking back to what we have done differently on this time, noting that it's great that we have actually increased the amount of engagement in this particular survey. So I commend city officers for actually getting, the benchmark moved higher and higher at that point. My first one, you mentioned just earlier, Matt, with regards to targeting younger age groups in future participations. Have we got any idea at this point in time what that might look like? I've had a bit of a look at our marketing and communications strategy and note that things like social media was 38% of how, I guess, people had heard about how they could engage. Noting that that's obviously an important realm for a lot of our youth. What other ways have we considered, or what will we maybe be considering, I guess, as we try to gauge those younger people to take the survey up and give us their feedback?
Yeah, good question. Through the chair, I don't have the specifics on how we're going to do that yet, but what we will do is we'll engage with our external stakeholder engagement team, with Adrian Bierman and his team, and we'll look at the best ways we can engage the youth moving forward. Yeah, there's a good learning from the survey that we can take to future surveys.
Please go.
Perfect. Thank you. Just in relation to the 2021 survey that we conducted, was there any incentive in relation to FPOS gift cards for that survey as well? I just wanted to double check if that was something that was new, or whether we'd used that previously as well, or whether you thought that might have had more of an impact this time round. It's Anna.
Through the chair, yes, we had the exact same incentive for the 21 survey.
Okay, perfect. And just my last one, I'd note again, coming back to the reach of the survey, which was phenomenal. It was almost 300,000 in its first instance, and then driving people to our website. I think we were close to, the number was 10,657 visitors. Noting that then nominally, almost, say half of that almost went on and completed the survey. Have we done an assessment then as to what the barriers we think might have been for those other 50% of people who we basically got there, but they just didn't take that next stop to complete? Have we had a look at that at any capacity yet? I know I'm asking probably things that will be forthcoming, but I just thought I'd ask the question.
Yeah, through the chair, no, we haven't looked at that yet, but I think we can tie that in with our conversation with Adrian and team and have a look at that.
Through the chair, if I could just add to that, I think with this particular survey, Councillor, we looked at that IAP2 construct, and it's really sitting in that consult, which is kind of only that second increment. So I think there is opportunities to potentially move that to the right, do some broader level engagement, and also think this particular survey, which replicated the approach in 2021, we took a very broad approach. So there is absolutely potential to look at, well, do we need to segment it, look at demographics like youth, like visitors, and then have a more focal point on that to get some better data. So I think those opportunities absolutely exist for future surveys.
So I've got Councillor Marshall and then Councillor Fowler and then Councillor Martin. But before we do that, you touched on, at slide 6, you touched on that 40% of people were aged between the ages of 45 and 64. Did we do much work on how the perceptions of safety differed between the different age demographics? Like, did young people feel more safe than the older demographic, and what were
Through the chair, we haven't broken the data down in that regard yet, but we can. That is something we can definitely do and provide to councillors.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Awesome. I'm going to go to Councillor Marshall, then Councillor Fowler, then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just in terms of the drugs, I thought the drug one was a really interesting one. Obviously, we had a 40% increase in prosecutions or reported crime, but then a decrease in the perception. I was wondering whether we'd sort of cross-referenced how much media we'd had in terms of drug offences now versus what we had previously, given that it seems like obviously the perception is coming from somewhere. If you look at the age, and building on what the Chair said, the age, obviously in the younger age, probably more social media, but surely we can look at the Bulletin or those sorts of ones where an older population are more likely to read those articles and see whether that's, I guess, jaded their perception or changed their perception from now to then. Have we done anything where we've sort of looked at the media coverage versus...
Yeah, through the chair, we've had a quick look at some of the media coverage, especially during our survey period now, but our assumption would be very much like domestic and family violence and drug use were most likely prominent stories back in 2021, which we can cross-check. So it's very dependent on what people are hearing and seeing in the media or on social media, which is going to influence their top safety concerns. So we can have a look into that data and verify that.
I think that'd be interesting.
Any other questions? You're good? No. Councillor Fowler and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm looking forward in the IAP to the next phase and what stage 2 looks like for this. One thing I think is important to consider is, as councillors, we're all very active in our divisions and we all attend all of our community groups, all of our neighbourhood watch meetings. And I think a consideration could be that we look at, rather than creating, if forums become part of that next consultation piece, why don't we look at the groups that already exist? I think a lot of the attendees at our community groups in all our divisions are really great centres of influence in our community. They're usually quite active in our community. They're usually members of multiple groups, and it could even be through the education that we can change perception by giving the data to these groups who can then infiltrate and go and spread the good word. So I'm really keen to look at, my neighbourhood watch meeting is next week. This would be something that I think would be a really great topic to talk through with them. And in the room is the police, is the Rural Fire Brigade. It's all those really key centres of influence. So I just think that's a good consideration when we're looking at what is the next step to change perception, is to really engage with those grassroots community groups who are already very active in our community. Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, completely agree. And if we're happy to come along if you want us to present with those groups as well.
It'd be quite cool if we could take this presentation and add some of the divisional elements to it in a template that a councillor could potentially do a presentation to their local neighbourhood watch and say, hey, we did this survey, this is what people are doing, and here's some local information for your, for this division or this area as well. And that'd be a fascinating piece to actually start talking about it in our communities. If some of us do lots of neighbourhood watch meetings, some of us do none, but, seems like a good idea. Councillor Martin, you had a question?
Just a comment, Chair, if I could.
Of course.
But yeah, totally support this, obviously, measure around perception versus reality, and that we can't always control a lot of the elements around perception. But I did just want to commend city officers on the safety camera network tour that a few of the councillors went on. Was so impressed with the investment and the work that's been done there. I won't talk too much about it, but just such an asset linking with police.
It's not a secret that it exists, Josh.
What's that?
Councillor Martin, it's not a secret that it exists.
No. Just don't want to give them the edge. But no, it's so impressive and it's such an asset for the city. So well done.
It's good. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the work that's been done here. There is, you're probably I'm sensing there's a little bit of frustration around perception versus reality. Certainly, we all went through an election recently, and it was something that was raised, and it was something that I often considered whether or not it's a self-fulfilling issue because it's constantly in the press. And so I'm curious as to whether or not you plan to, or how you might go about trying to align perception with reality in the face of the influence of media influencers and social media. It's going to be a real challenge to catch those two to align, I suspect.
Yeah, through the chair, you're right. That is a true challenge that I think every local government faces across Australia. This next period where we go and review and engage the community safety program, we'll be looking at that quite specifically. We'll work with our corporate communications team on how we can best educate and get that message out there. The idea of attending forums to get the message out there as well is something we'll look at. But we'll engage with councillors, we'll engage internally, we'll look at and we'll speak to the best people around how do we best do that, because it's a constant challenge.
It's an example, I suppose, is one that I'd like to drill into a little bit. Hooning was quite high up on one of the slides you had a few minutes ago. Hooning, in many sense of the word, we think about cars in our streets. Do you think that there's, given perception is what this is about, do you think that some of the respondents were probably thinking about e-scooters and e-bikes on our footpaths in that respect, given that I know I get a lot of concerns from local residents around their safety while walking on our streets? Do you think that that's fed into some of those numbers?
Through the chair, yeah, it will feed into the numbers. So how people view hooning, by their own personal definition, would impact how they're going to respond to this. With any survey, a respondent might select driving behaviour and think that's hooning, or they might select hooning. So I think that is something that we would take into consideration.
And just finally, Mr. Chair, so it's great to capture this data. There is some unease around the alignment with the stats that probably differ from perception to reality, but I don't think we should underestimate that perception is a real concern in the community, and perception is often reality. It's a person's reality. So there's the challenge that you've got ahead of you, the committee and that the council has ahead of us, is to try to align perception with reality as much as fix the numbers, because we only have so much within our scope to be able to influence a lot of these actions that are causing concerns with the community. So
That's great.
Thanks.
I had one other question I just wanted to ask. We talked a little bit about that the perceptions of safety weren't necessarily related to actual crime data. Did the areas of the respondents correspond with the actual levels of crime in those areas? So we had lots of people from Surfers Paradise and Robina, and was there any analysis around whether the respondents had higher crime rates? It sounds a bit strange.
Through the chair, we haven't gone that deep with that just yet, but again, we can look and cut this data however we want, so we could do that analysis.
Yeah, okay.
And have a look at perceptions of safety for different suburbs aligned to crime data.
Yeah, I think one thing I would really love, there was a slide where you had maybe slide 10, no, that one there. So the offences count, you've done the offence count in 2021 and the offence count in 23, 24. Be cool if there was just the two other columns that had the offence counts for the, I'm assuming it's just a matter of drawing a standard data, like it's probably some sort of database somewhere that you can just kind of put it in. But if you had two other columns for the years in between those two surveys, just so you can kind of see that, I think that'd be really interesting. If there's a way we can do that and then distribute it to councillors, that'd be awesome.
Through the chair, yeah, we already have that data. It was just a matter of too much information on a slide,
yeah. Okay.
So we can provide that quite quickly.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated to see how that changes, and then kind of we can have a look at that growth over that period of 3 years and go from there. The last question I had is it expected that in 2027 there'll be another Safe City survey?
Through the chair, yes. Yep.
Right, and so we'll continue to keep this moving every 3 years and that cycle going.
Through the chair,
thank you, Councillor.
I think through the chair, I think the big component to that though is that we would see that having a more robust measure around it. So probably a combination of perceptions of safety with improvements based on our survey, as well as maybe efficacy of those actual programs that we're delivering.
Yeah, great. Councillor Doran and then Councillor Curse.
Thank you, Chair. I just forgot one of my questions. It comes back to the perception of the data and really trying to drill into how the community is feeling. One of the weaknesses on a survey like this, a whole of city survey, in my perceptions, is that an issue in the current age could maybe happen in Broadbeach, but be seen instantly on social media in Robina and start to influence how people feel within our community. So when we break down the statistics, perception of how you feel in terms of whether you feel safe or what you feel are the issues in your community can often be influenced by places outside of your community or even outside of the city. How does the team feel like that can be confronted or improved in the next round of survey?
Through the chair, very good question. I think it's something we have to take on notice and have a think about. Quite difficult to do due to a survey. Surveys always have their limitations, hence why we want to supplement this with other data. But we'll take that away and have a think about that. Maybe through some focus groups might be a good way to do that.
Councillor Curtis.
Thanks through you, Chair. A couple of times when I've tried to take community through the offence counts to try to instill some confidence that there isn't an increase. The most common rebuttal is that there's an underreporting to police because there's not enough police to receive the report, or B, they've lost faith in the system. Is there any truth to that, or is there a reply?
Through the chair, we'd have to engage with QPS on that, I believe. I'm not too sure.
We've had some success in Mudgeeraba. We have we call it the Mudgeeraba Police Community Consultative Committee that meet the first Monday of each even-numbered month. So it's every 2 months they get together, and a representative of police brings the data from the local police. There's like different geographic areas that the police, it's like almost not, you wouldn't call it a leaderboard, but it's like a ranking of different areas and where crime rates there. And we've had some success in that group. All of the neighbourhood watch groups in my division come to that meeting, and then we report back through them how those crime statistics relate for our area versus other areas. That's been a really good way to change perceptions. There's definitely been in our area a changing perception that actually Mudgeeraba is doing pretty well when it comes to crime compared to other places, even though bad things happen, like every community. Those perceptions are changing, and it also, that idea of community policing has been re-emphasised, that these people come to this meeting and they get to speak to a cop. In fact, they could often get to speak to the top cop in our area. And they've also our local areas embarked on a Coffee with a Cop program, which is happening, I think, today in Warringah. So I don't know if those programs could potentially help add value, but we're happy to kind of connect your local police to our local police and see if there's ways we can do some of those things.
It's kind of more the response that we get to them, which is, they're skewed figures because no one's around to receive the reports, I guess, is the concern, rather than them not having access to the data. They get the data, they just refute it sometimes. And I wondered if there was any evidence to suggest that there is some validity in the claim.
I don't know, there's probably a piece of data that you could find about, the QPS might be able to provide about hang-ups on the 131444 number or things like that. But, we wouldn't have access to that. Any other questions about this today? Councillor Fowler, I think you committed... Are you on this committee? You can't... Who was it? It was Councillor Curtis. Sorry, Councillor Curtis said she'd move it. Councillor Wilkinson will second that motion. Did you want to make any final remarks, Councillor Curtis, as the mover of the motion?
Absolutely, and I would start by commending your team and terrific work you did, and that opportunity that the new councillors received, and standing councillors received to go and visit the facility of the CCTV program, and all the strategies that collectively enhance the safety in reality. We're super impressed and really grateful for the hard work that you do, and we look forward to finding a way to share that information with the community so that perception matches reality in the hard work that you do. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Curtis. While it's not noted in the motion, it sounds like amongst councillors they're quite keen for those divisional reports to come through. We haven't put it in the motion, but I think I've taken that we've asked that to happen. Any other comments? All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thanks, Matt and team. Please do. Yeah. And great having you with us, Ms. Swain. It's just great. Our next item of business is a snapshot of the Junior Council and Youth programs. And welcoming back Jody and Kate and their team from Service Gold Coast.
Good morning, councillors. Good morning, committee. So today I'm here to talk about some of the supports and programs available to young people in the city, but with a small caveat that with so many points of connection between council and young people, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but rather an opportunity to provide you with a snapshot of the many offers we have for young people up and down the coast, with a focus today on those areas primarily delivered through our youth program 2027. So a bit of demography, so if you're not tired of the data from the previous presentation, throughout the presentation I will be referring to young people primarily as the age group between 12 and 24. This is the census definition, but there are some different stats as well, and I've illustrated those where there are differences. So the statistics on the screen come from the 2021 census, which tells us that there's just under 100,000 young people who call the Gold Coast home between 12 and 24, and that makes them around 15% of the population, or 1 in 6. 3.5% of these young people have a need for assistance, so these are young people with a disability of some form. 89% of 15 to 24-year-olds are employed, and 65% are engaged in education. 9.2% of Gold Coast young people are volunteering in some capacity, and 19% of them were born overseas. We've got 3.6%, I should say, of our young people are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, and somewhat soberingly, as at the last census, 17% of those persons who are homeless in the city were young people. Population projections looking forward show that the highest growth and population numbers in the city are in that northern corridor, as we would expect. So the city's 2027 youth program provides our strategic framework to guide the council's youth initiatives and programs over a 4-year period from 23 through to 27, and is grouped under 3 main themes: get ahead, get connected, and get involved. Through the community consultation for the youth plan, we heard a lot from young people and the broader community in terms of what's important to our young people and what their aspirations were in terms of the future for the city. Some of these areas are under the control of the city, but I think it's important for us to recognise that there are other areas, state government, federal government, etc., where there are other areas of jurisdiction. And I'll talk a little bit more around that, because I think it is important in terms of the topic. But for us here in the city, our young people identified some really key areas that they wanted to see us in the future be leaders in. Very timely for this particular committee, leaders in climate change and change response, greener, more trees. Young people wanted to see improved public transport, safer places, both neighbourhoods and streets, obviously a link to our previous presentation. Affordable and accessible housing. Again, this is something that we will have seen grow in expectation over recent months and years. More awareness around services that can support their mental fitness. Better access and more affordable access to GPs. And equity and inclusion specifically relating to gender, sexual orientation, cultural and socioeconomic status. Our youth program has 30 actions, and we are on track to deliver for that 2027 deadline. I'll go into a little bit more detail later on in terms of 2 of the completed actions, a tap link that we've launched, and also platforms that we have to showcase young creatives across the city. It's important to view our initiatives and programs delivered in the city, as I said earlier, in the context of what is also delivered by the state. So on the right-hand side, we've set out the broad jurisdiction for the state, for the Queensland Government, which includes employment, training, education, youth justice, housing, residential care, transport, advocacy, environment, statutory care and health. So those big elements that are difficult to deliver at a local level. The city, on the left-hand side, operates activities or supports such as our youth program. So we have the Gold Coast Youth Hubs, which are an after-school club available through our community centres, and those that offer also supports holiday centres as well, and that's delivered in partnership with the Wesley Mission. We've got our libraries, and you'll hear more from them later. Active and healthy programs. We have beach safety programs, and of course our flagship Junior Council. Started in 1993 by Ashmore Rotary. 37 out of 48 of our high schools now participate in Junior Council. It's the largest of its kind in southeast Queensland, and we always know we like a little bit of competition. Junior Council is a 2-year civic program involving students from years 10 and 11. We've currently got 144 students participating, and those are arranged around 5 main programs throughout the year. Additionally, there have been around 13 opportunities for members of Junior Council to participate in plans, external opportunities, and consultation around plans and broader council consultations. Interestingly, 15% of our Junior Council participants at the moment speak a language other than English. And we're working really hard with schools to identify future students so that we really get that diversity in the Junior Council going forward. Because it's been running since 1993, we've actually built up an alumni of some 2,400 participants, which is really quite fantastic. And what we're starting to see is that some of those participants from previous junior councils are now, we're having contact with them through other means. So we recently ran a CPR session for junior council. The paramedic delivering it was a junior council alumni. And there's a really nice throw in a little bit in terms of that feed through and the connection that creates and continuity for the city and what we offer our young people. So Junior Council provides students with the opportunity to take part in their local community and to be local leaders. So they're developing an understanding of local government, which is not always that straightforward. So I think it's a good opportunity for our young people to understand the complexity of government, discussing and raising awareness of current and local community issues, developing skills, communication, public speaking, developing their leadership, and providing a platform for them to meet new people, have a voice and exchange ideas, and also look at volunteering activities. And I know a lot of the current junior council are really keen volunteers back into their community. One of the many examples coming out of junior council, and I think it's always important to have a meaningful example, is our tap link. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll even give you a chance to download it, so please get your phones out. After consultation with young people, we developed, in partnership, an online resource to support young people to gather information and have one point of contact in terms of support for mental health. So we heard from our junior council and broader young people that they wanted a one-stop shop where they could actually access specific information, digital, where they could understand what supports are available to them, primarily in mental health, but also in terms of other areas of potential need. So this resource is a very flat 2D self-help page for young people to be able to just literally QR code and then scroll through, finding supports available to them. The hierarchy of needs determined in partnership with Queensland Health and their nurses, understanding what the most common questions are that young people are coming forward to relevant services for. Since we launched in 2023, there's been over 2,500 click-throughs on the tap link, and it's been shared through all primary schools. And in conversation with the junior council, they have also distributed it through their schools and with their peers. More broadly, we've seen it used across all of the Gold Coast youth sector. The QPS is using it. Our state Safer Schoolies response is using it. Queensland Health, Queensland Education, and we've also got it proudly displayed in our community centres and libraries. We do, and it's used. And because it's a web-based platform, we can also use it with Google Translator, so that enables our multicultural communities and young people to also have access to this really important information. So that's just one of many examples we have that have come out of Junior Council, but also through the youth program. Some of the wider offers available, and as I said at the beginning, there is so much that goes on for young people in the city, and it's hard to capture it all. But as we move further afield, some of the wider offers available are delivered by different parts of council, including the Gold Coast Youth Hubs that I mentioned earlier, delivered in partnership with the Wesley Mission. So that it's a safe space for young people, 12 to 18 in this case, to have activities and to do activities such as have social groups, cooking classes, homework help, resume guidance, and even support with written driving tests. The school holiday program, happily, is a device-free activity where young people will, again, do cooking, art, games, movies and craft. And twice a year we operate an Olympics of sorts, so a winter and a summer Olympics, where young people in the picture you can see on the screen, young people get together and compete within the other centres that also make access of those hubs.
Who wins? Tommy's not been tomorrow.
I'll have to take that one on notice, Chair.
All right,
I'm frightened for the competition. Everyone's a winner.
Of course, that's the right answer.
Everyone's
that's the correct answer.
Then I've previously presented to committee in terms of our arts and culture offer, but some of those programs are very much delivered for our young people. So a range of opportunities in terms of level up. So visual arts program for young creatives aged 18 to 25. We also have 2 residencies available in Mint Art House, which is spun out from our arts and culture programs, and a really well-established facility in the south of the city. And that one's for ages 18 to 30. And then we've got Next Gen GC, which is a program for any creative practice. So ages 18 to 25. So they get really intensive mentorship to really drive their professional creative practice. and grow those creative networks, which we know are very, very important for that area. Moving a little bit further afield, our lifeguards deliver surf safety education to young people to keep them and their friends and family safe on our beaches. And I heard committee talking earlier about the importance of using points of contact to really drive change and understanding. And I think our young people are really key in terms of keeping people safe on our beaches. So our lifeguards deliver in-person education sessions. They've got really related, targeted social media campaigns, radio and television, and hard materials such as posters and signs and stuff on the beaches that really help people understand. Our manager of lifeguards presented previously and talked a little bit about some of that social media campaign that's actually up for a national award, and that's part of this particular program as well in terms of our targeting particular community segments who are at risk on our beaches, and unfortunately sometimes young people can be in that grouping. Then we have our libraries, and not to steal my excellent colleague's thunder, we do have lots of programs within our libraries for young people, slightly younger demographic in the main. So First Five Forever program for 0 to 5-year-olds. We've got baby rhyme time for little bubs up to 2, toddler time for ages 2 to 4, story time 3 to 5. So really focusing in on those early opportunities for young people to develop connection with community services, but also that early literacy, which we know has such a strong evidence base. There's kids stuff with Lego, which we love. And for 6 to 12-year-olds, we have school holiday programs, summer reading clubs, children's book week, and a suite of other activities. As you can see on the screen, there's a lot going on in the coming 12 months, both in terms of what we deliver and where we support the broader community sector. So much of this work is done in collaboration with our partners. We'll, of course, continue to deliver our program, including our Junior Council. And top tip, if you haven't already got it in your diaries, the 11th of September, our next Junior Council will actually be a World Cafe style, where councillors will have the opportunity to sit with Junior Council and talk about key topics. So hopefully you have that in your diaries now. It will be here in Hotter. We'll also continue to work with our marketing and comms team, and I think there's a really nice link with the conversation from the previous presentation around that engagement on social media with key segments, and we will continue to look at how we can drive connection with our young people. We know that Facebook is not the medium of choice for young people, and so really looking at Insta and other opportunities for us to make sure we're getting that content out there in a consumable way. We're also going to be delivering the Gold Coast Young Leaders Conference in October, bringing together years 7 and 8 students, so that's quite a large offering across the Gold Coast, and that's an opportunity for them to develop skills, grow networks and learn about their roles as young leaders. And this is really a precursor for the wider Junior Council. Before I move to questions, if you haven't already had the opportunity to meet our Junior Council, they're on the screen. Eva in blue in the middle to the right is the executive from last year, and Nevi in the green blazer in the centre to the left is our current Junior Council executive.
Great.
Thank you.
There is no doubt that there is some wonderful programs for youth, and when people ask us the questions as divisional councillors, where do your rates go to, I think we kind of underplay. Like we talk about roads, bases and rubbish, but this work that we do with young people in our city is pretty profound and important. So it's a great contribution. Thank you. Did anyone have any questions about the youth program? Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, it was more probably just related to, obviously we've got the app, and I was wondering whether that youth help card is going to live on the app at some point. It seems that young people love to access the app better than we do, but...
Through the chair, do you mean the card that actually has the QR code on it?
Yeah, or even just a link to that page so that it was in a one easy to find sort of spot.
Yes, through the chair. There are, so if you Google Gold Coast Tap Link or Youth Tap Link, it will that page will actually load, and the QR code and the postcard that is a hard version is available on there as well. But very, very happy to take any suggestions in terms of how to get that out in different formats if we feel there are gaps.
Yeah, I just felt like if there was a one-stop shop with our app already, that's a beaches check, path check, and then onto the app.
Just so I got it clear, are you talking about the integration of this youth information on the City of Gold Coast
On the
app?
City of Gold Coast app, yeah, sorry.
So it's a separate, the Tap Link is a separate web-based platform for youth uniquely?
That is correct, Chair. So the Tap Link is not solely owned by the City, so it's delivered in partnership.
Yep.
And I think the roadmap in terms of City's digital footprint and what we're offering and pushing to the community is definitely
out of Kate's remit. Joe, did you want to comment on that, whether there's a capacity for us to include some of this youth information on our City of Gold Coast app?
Yeah. So it's definitely something we can look at. It would be coming back to the demographics of who downloads the app and whether the youth are relevant and find it, because realistically it's providing services of for ratepayers primarily. So I think the flat 2D version we have now makes it really accessible for them, and they'd have to download an app and find an app, which isn't always the practice and behaviour. So it's something we can look at, but that's probably just the caution on going down that route.
Yeah, sure.
Young people are too hip for apps, mate.
What's that?
Young people are too hip for apps. They like their Snapchat, but not
They'll be checking the surf butt, so maybe you can have a link. Anyway,
cool,
my other question was probably completely inappropriate here, but I was just interested in the volunteer percentage you had for youth.
No questions inappropriate from a councillor. That's all good. You're okay.
We had about, I think it was 9%, yeah. 9% for youth. But what was it, I guess, for older generations, just to put that into context? I just wasn't sure if 9% volunteer for our youth was good, bad, versus other age groups.
Through the Chair, I can come back to you in terms of a breakdown of young people volunteering as a
versus the benchmark.
Versus the benchmark.
Broader
my understanding is that Gold Coast is higher than you would see across the rest of Queensland, but I'll come back to you.
Yeah, perfect.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. This wasn't one of my questions, but just to follow up from Councillor Marshall, could you also maybe, if there is data that shows whether it's a trending up or down from previous statistics or years, that would be helpful information too. You mentioned the youth hubs. Can you just, I know that they are located within community centres. Could you tell me where they are active on the coast at the moment, the youth hub element of it?
Again, I will, through the Chair, I can provide that as a summary. That's delivered through our venues team and community centres, so I can provide a breakdown of operating hours and locations for those youth hubs.
Thank
There's
you.
around 6 across the city in terms of the after-school clubs, and then slightly more for the school holiday clubs.
Selfishly trying to see whether there are any around my area, and I don't think there are.
Not selfish at all.
No inappropriate
question,
questions. No inappropriate questions.
No, it's a good question.
I think before I go to the next question, like the engaging our youth in ways that help demonstrate respect for our community and respect for other people is a really important part of our city, and the chairs note the chairs comments. We do more than just water rates and rubbish, and this is really important to make sure that we are engaging youths, because we just had a report as to what can potentially be the perception when they do go off the rails. Noting the representation of the Robina State High School on the screen there via Ethan Burton. Just get that sneaky one in there. Query about those aged between 12 and 24 wanting better public transport. That seems fairly selfish in some respects because they don't have a car. Does that change when they get a bit older? No?
I'm not aware. Again, this is something I'll need to come back to you on.
I'm just picking these up from the presentation, so this
absolutely.
Okay.
And the provision of public transport again is a state function in the main. So
no, I appreciate that, but you mentioned in a report that that it is quite high as a percentage that they're interested in those things and climate change and other things, and I'm sort of drilling down as to whether or not that changes at a point in time. I feel like that's a reasonable follow-up question to those statistics. One more question, Mr. Chair, if that's all right. You mentioned that the alumni is just over 2,500, and there was a recent exercise where a former alum helped with the, I think it was respiratory. Is there any structure around tapping into the alumni in a purposeful way to engage with the program?
The alumni are drawn on from time to time. Whether it's structured, that would be potentially an additional component to the program.
Feels like there's an opportunity there, a bit like
an alumni network, almost like a large, some of our big schools have an alumni network. It's good.
Thank you.
Fascinating idea. Councillor Wilkinson, you had some questions.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, firstly, I just want to commend the team for the work they are doing in this youth space. To hear the presentation given today is actually really uplifting for me, I guess as a newer councillor, to know about all these things that are happening for our younger people across the city. So commend the officers for their work on that. It's great to hear as far as, and I guess it's an extension upon Councillor Doran's questioning to a degree, leaning into those junior councillors and their contributions, I guess, back to things like you mentioned, Kate, planning. How can you give me a bit of an idea on how that actually looks like, when that takes place? And does that involve, say, the different departments of the city meeting with the junior council to get their feedback on things like, you know, you touched on public transport, for example, as things that the young people care about. Can you give me an idea of when that just kind of takes place in the broader consultation? Obviously, they sound like they're all jumping on the surveys and completing them, which is obviously a great thing. But yeah, just in the relation, because I really think that engagement on the planning side for our city is so important, and this is a great conduit for I guess, that youth engagement from the city side of things. So I also just want to shout out Nevi, because he goes to AB Patterson, so thought I might sneak one in there as well.
Councillor Wilkinson, you're following bad behaviour there.
Through the chair, thank you. An excellent question. And I think recognising the size of council, that is quite a challenge for our very, very small team to be able to have those networks and that influence within the city when areas areas much larger than ours, waste, environment, etc., where they are going out to public consultation, for them to know that we are there to facilitate and to support them in having young people engaged as part of their consultation. So that's something we have been working very, very hard on. But it's a challenge.
It's good. Any other questions? All right. Does someone want to help me note the presentation? Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Martin. So moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the presentation be noted. I reckon Councillor Wilkinson's closing remarks are enough to close debate. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Kate and team, thank you. We're going to move on to city libraries, because books are awesome.
That's true.
But we do more than books.
You could do this presentation.
I'm going to leave it to you, Melinda.
Good morning, everyone. Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity today to present. My name's Melinda Bucher. I'm the General Manager of Libraries, and I'm here today to give you an overview of this most incredible library service. As you can see from this lady, I purposely led off with this slide.
She's enjoying the libraries right now.
With her free audio book. That's exactly right. And, you know, libraries aren't a shush. It's libraries anywhere, anytime, in any format you need. And I've tried to also use some of the imaging to help explain and to make sure that I leave the right image of our incredible service in your minds and those of our community. Our aim continues to be the very best library service in Australia. And that continues to be our goal, and I believe we are the very best library service in Australia. And that is because of our people, who are incredible, the huge amount of our services, our incredible collection, and our future. And you can see there the statistics from last financial year, just how much the community values the services that libraries offer. Libraries are an incredibly important service offering to the community. They offer facilities and spaces and meeting rooms and programs and accessibility to a huge range of resources for leisure, learning, connection and growth. It's one of the few places where everyone is welcome. You don't have to pay to come into a library, and all core library services are free. You don't need to be a library member to come inside and enjoy the facilities, to browse the collection, to attend a program, to hear from a famous author, or to attend a program to increase your digital literacy skills. But if you do become a library member, well, then you can also take home any physical library item that you wish. You can download ebooks, e-magazines, you can stream free music and movies from our collection. You can access LinkedIn Learning and Ancestry.com, and you can do all that for free. The only charges are to use the printing and copying services, and they are very minimal. Of course, the service relies on its people, and we do have the best people of any library service. They carry a huge responsibility in ensuring that they offer all of our services with, a kind and welcoming and contemporary style, but with empathy and with trust. Libraries, as you may know, are often the first point of contact for people who are experiencing issues such as homelessness, mental illness, and addiction. And our staff are allocated on average 1.5 hours per week, every staff member, for professional development. And this includes training on how to help those people that are experiencing challenges, referring to complementary services, and how to manage what can be quite challenging situations in libraries. You can imagine we've got 11 libraries and multiple service points. There's a huge range of services. We have over 360,000 library members. We have interstate, we have international visitors and the general public. So like last year, there were over 4,000 programs offered, attended by over 130,000 people, which included 2,000 family engagement programs attended by 91,000 children and parents. So there's a real diversity in the library. The communities are diverse and the peoples are diverse. And in fact, we've got the second largest library service in Australia. In terms of security, and please, you're welcome to interrupt and ask questions at any time. We do have security at all of our libraries, and really since COVID, we have experienced increasing levels of OVA because people are looking for somewhere, they're looking for somewhere where they can be safe. They might not be in a safe environment themselves, but sometimes those people have challenges themselves and they can cause other people to be afraid or worried. So we have now security, either guards or protective service officers, nearly full-time in every single library, except, for example, like the Burleys, where the guard might be rotating between those two small libraries because the distance is quite close together. And all of our staff are trained in de-escalation. And that security model has changed several times as we evolve the operating model to make sure we're keeping up with community demands and keeping our community safe, and most importantly, our staff safe. We also have a range of devices within libraries and software to also enhance the security measures that we put in place. Some of them visible, some of them not. As you can see from this summary, there is an extensive range of services on offer. Of course, physical books form the cornerstone of the library service, but that is just one of many great services. We have a huge range of physical assets like buildings and vehicles. There's a huge range of technology. In fact, we're the largest provider of ICT services to the public on behalf of council. Customers can self-serve if they wish, so we've got self-serve checkouts, we've got library kiosks scattered around the region, but we also offer in-house expertise. So, people that want readers advisory service, they might need help with a research project, or they might be looking for a particular genre or author. So we also do in-house expertise service and research assistance. And as Kate mentioned, we have our first 5 Forever program, which is funded by the State Library of Queensland, and it's dedicated to early literacy for 0 to 5-year-olds. So you can get a library service in library, on the road, and you can also download it. We keep our community up to date on our social platforms. So we have Facebook for the oldies, we have Insta for the younger people, we have YouTube, and of course we've got a very big presence on the corporate website. We offer library services in the community in a range of ways. We would term this outreach services. We just call it library services in the community. So there's a pop-up library that's available for divisional events or community events where they want a library presence for a temporary short time, couple of hours. We've got the home library service, so for people who find it physically challenging to attend a library, They can ask to be added to our home library service. So we're currently delivering physical items to over 100 people in their homes. We have little libraries that are scattered around the region, and they are stocked with books set free. So after our books have worked their little magic and their time to be retired, instead of being 99.999% recycled, they are put into little libraries, and people can just take them home and give them to someone else. We also give donations to prisons and to community groups as requested. And of course, we've also got our mobile library, which I cover in a later slide. In terms of outreach, the First 5 Forever program also provides outreach services. So we often attend, very specialised children's functions like the Titans NAIDOC Family Festival, Coomera Springs Child Health Week, Child Protection Week, Teddy Bears Picnic. We also provide some early literacy packs for vulnerable families. So we gave over 280 early literacy picture and book donations to Baby Give Back, a not-for-profit, and some other community groups. We also have the fabulous Local Studies collection located in Southport Library. So it houses the largest and the oldest collection about the history of the Gold Coast. And of course, if you're interested in looking at council minutes from many, many years ago, you can research them all there, or you can see the team and they can pull out those minutes for you.
Do you go back to even when Councillor Castro started? Does it go back that far?
We go back eons.
Wow.
Eons.
That's great news. Sorry. No respect. No respect these days. No respect.
Is the archive room named after Councillor Castro?
Oh, that hurts. Shots fired, Melinda. Sorry about that. The presentation is going very well, and please forgive me.
Okay, it's okay. But, I would encourage you to go and visit Local Studies. Half the collection is digitised, so you can see it online, and there are fabulous images representative of your division, and you can get copies of them. Really fabulous. And we feature some of these archival pictures in various libraries as well. And the corporate library is a function, and that's also integrated with the Local Studies team. So the corporate library is there for staff and councillors to assist during research and project inquiries. So if you're ever looking for some expertise or support, and maybe a divisional project, you can call upon the corporate library to help you. As I mentioned, library programs. All of our programs are categorised into reading, writing, literacy and learning. So every service and every program also in those themes ties back to our collection. So that means regardless of what you're learning or seeing or hearing, we have that information in the library collection for you to either take home or to download. And that's one of our key value adds for the community. We never offer anything that you won't actually be able to source in the library. We had 43 author talks from various libraries last financial year. We provided adult learning classes such as digital literacy and English conversation circles. And of course, the community can book our free meeting rooms. So they can book them to hold their craft or their gardening or their chess or their Italian immersion classes. As long as they're open and anyone is able to, pop in and join them, you can book our meeting rooms. Kate did mention about our 0 to 5 early literacy program, which of course is the very best in Queensland, with baby rhyme time and toddler time and story time and stay and learn. And of course, we have a kids zone now at every library. So in the afternoon, you can just go there with your kids and there's a dedicated space where you can play with different resources. We have the school holiday program, summer reading club, children's book read. We also have high school study drop-in, which is offered during the school term, Monday to Friday, and on different days at different libraries. And we also have bespoke business programs. So we work in collaboration, for example, with the Light Rail Stage 3 project, and we offer a range of business programs there from the Burleigh Heads Library. We're also working with cybersecurity and offering cybersecurity awareness to seniors. And this October, we're going to be offering story time sessions with messaging for 3 to 5-year-olds about flooding and storms, just so that they can understand the storm season and what it means to them in an age-appropriate way. The collection is expansive. So you can see there just how big the physical and digital collection is. 85% of the physical collection has been replaced in the last 5 years. So it makes it one of the most current and loaned collections that you will find anywhere. In fact, on average, our books are out 33% of the time. That's the average loan rate. In fact, Gold Coast libraries, I'm not competitive, but the usage per capita average is 7.4 and Gold Coast libraries is 10.3. So collections, it's not actually the size that matters. You don't want to just see endless books. You only want a collection that is loaned and borrowed, and it needs to move, and it needs to move regularly, because otherwise you're not getting a collection that is actually being curated for the demographics that are accessing that library. So we manage our collection incredibly carefully. In terms of trends, we see an increase in paper-based physical books for 0 to 12 years. So picture books, junior teen type books. There's absolutely been a decrease in audio-visual items like CDs, DVD, audiobooks. We believe that this decrease will continue, and there's hardly any new movies being released to DVD, and Disney and its production houses, they ceased putting anything to DVD back last year in August 23. So instead of that, we offer digital versions. So we offer Freegal for music streaming, Canopy for movie streaming, BorrowBox and Libby for e-audio. So we absolutely see a huge trend upwards in people who are accessing our digital collection. You may be interested to know that our physical collection floats, and a lot of large libraries that have a collection like ours and the diversity of facilities has a floating collection. We see our collection as a one library network. So to make sure that the collection works as hard as it can, the most efficient and effective way possible, we float it. It means that customers can pick up a book from any library, they can deposit it back in any library, and we have a collection system where the books are put in crates for a library and they all end up at our depot, and then they all go back out to the libraries, and this happens on a daily basis throughout the entire network. It's an excellent customer fulfillment process, and it means that we can guarantee that the customer will receive their book in upwards sometimes in just 1 day, but within 2 days they will receive the book that they've put on hold if it's available. So it's a really incredible service. Whoops. The depot is at Ashmore, near the DMU. We also have many success stories. You can see there one of our homegrown authors, Michelle Upton, who wrote a book at Helensvale Library. She's now published by HarperCollins, and she comes back and she gives author talks in libraries for aspiring authors. So how cool is that? And you can also see there Lemon Tree Marketing. They're based in Miami, and actually they're providing some of the marketing for the businesses at Burleigh Heads. So it's really great to see people that use our libraries for their businesses, and then they're able to actually bring it back to the community. So that's a bit about where we've been and now about where we're going. So the library continues to evolve. There's lots of studies by different libraries and the State Library of Queensland about what customers are looking for. They absolutely want access to more information on their terms, and they want connection to others, but also on their terms. A bit like sitting on a bus where if You'd like to see everyone there, but you want to sit by yourself. And that's a little bit how we actually do our layouts of our libraries, to enable lots of different opportunities to cater for how people want to connect to others, because they want safe and welcoming spaces, but they want them for different reasons. So for leisure, for learning, for growth, and for working. And they also want a lot of access to charging stations, especially in post-disaster situations. Everyone comes to a library because they know they're safe and they know that they can start charging their phones, their hearing aids, all of their devices, because they might not have electricity back at home. The industry continues to evolve. They can see that the physical collections have been decreasing and digital collections are increasing. They're advocating that libraries make flexible floor space to make sure that libraries can continue to evolve to what customers need, and to look at different ways in offering services. We've done a lot of changes ourselves. We've changed our operating model several times over the last 5 years. We've gone from a site-specific model to a one library network model, centrally managed, regionally administered. And you can see there that our libraries are generally sized. So the red is our largest libraries, our district are shown in orange, and our local libraries are shown in yellow. And as part of moving to this centralised model, we've centralised our services and our programs. We've harmonised wherever possible library operating hours. We've harmonised staff working conditions, floor layouts. We have a furniture and equipment standard to drive value for money. Equipment and collateral is standardised. It's about an 80-20 rule, 80% consistent, 20% really bespoke to those community and catchment needs of who they serve. We've built an FTE calculator that helps us determine how many people we need, shelving calculators on how many books we need. So we take the management of it very carefully. And in fact, only last week we opened with new operating hours. So the libraries are opening now at 8:30 and closing, most of them at 5 o'clock, and a late night offering at 7 p.m. So lattes at libraries at 7 o'clock. Come and join us. You can see there the evolution of the layouts. So we've moved from long rows of shelves for customers to navigate with very little flexible floor space to the shelving units that you can see there at Burleigh Heads. They're mobile. As much as possible, our furniture and equipment is on lockable wheels, and it's mixed with seating to really invite and bring customers into the collection. And we have a standard furniture and equipment suite to support value for money, consistency, and to get a contemporary style. Here's some evolution of shelving. So we used to have tall, very full shelves, which were pretty unappealing, to low set shelves there that you can see at Robina, and at the right height for their customers. So in the children's area, you'll often see the shelving is quite low, and it also enables books to be more face out, so more of that bookshop style. The way that the books are put together is changing, and we're moving to genreification. So instead of having rows of books according to the decidural system, we've gone to genre-based. So we've started this. It will take us several months to complete. But if you walk into a bookshop, you're not looking for a number, you're looking for romance. Or you might be looking for travel or crime. And that's the same experience you should be able to have in a library. It's much more customer-focused, much more intuitive way to find what you're looking for. The demand, as I said before, for digital resources is really increasing. We've got a great impending relationship with schools just on the cusp. So one of our suppliers, Overdrive, has a new app for schools called Sora. And there's 35 local schools. And if they take up the Queensland education offer, they can access teen-appropriate content from this new app called Sora. And then it'll enable them to add Gold Coast libraries. And they can join libraries, and we can help to nurture literacy in teens and children, and they'll be able to access our content, age appropriate, and become library members. So continuing to drive membership with our youth, which will be fantastic. I'm sure you all know about the evolution of our special needs to our accessible collection. It used to be housed in just one library behind a closed door. We worked with the Queensland Disability Network to understand how to make this collection more accessible and appealing for people with all types of different needs. And from this, the accessible collection was born. We now have all of these resources available at every library. They're for all ages and abilities. They assist in the development of maths and language skills, fine motor skills, recognition of emotions and memory. There's some of the features there. And of course, you would have seen the Mayor looking at the accessible collection and extolling its virtues with Channel 7 a couple of weeks ago. It's been really great to see this collection out in the community. You can play with it there in a library, or of course you can just loan it and take it home. And the way that we've engaged continues to evolve. You can see there the way that we engage with young people has changed, where before it was really like library or librarian-led, and the focus was really on the librarian, where now it is absolutely active parents and children, with children leading their learning and engagement. It's been a big change to how programs are managed within libraries, and it's very successful. We've also had a substantial ICT investment, which is our RFID program, Radio Frequency Information Devices. And we have upgraded all of our internal auto book sorters. So with such a big collection, you can of course imagine that you can have manual handling incidents when you're dealing with such vast quantities of physical items. They have all been upgraded. We've got one left, which is at Runaway Bay. That'll be very, very soon. Can't wait to see that happen. And it's a much smaller footprint. You have these smart bins where once customers return their books, you can wheel the bin over to the machine, click it in, bin automatically goes up, tips over, tips all the books and magazines onto the conveyor belt, goes up the conveyor belt, RFI reader reads it and puts the books into different genre, ready to go out into the shelves. So it minimises manual handling, it minimises turnaround, and it automatically checks those books off the customer's account as soon as they're read by the RFID reader. So it's great technology. We've also replacing all of the checkouts within a library. We've got new return chutes outside of libraries. We have banks of public PCs, which we will be changing to laptops in the future, and you'll be able to loan a laptop and work anywhere in a library facility because, of course, we have free Wi-Fi at all of our libraries. You'd also be very familiar with the mobile library. There's the bus from 94, and there's our truck now, which is actually end of life. The truck holds a collection size of 8,000 books. It goes to 14 locations. It is due to be replaced. We've identified many other sites that need to be visited by the mobile library, so it seeks to service those in isolated areas or areas where there is a considerable distance to another physical library. But of course, with a truck that big, you can't drive anywhere and park it just anywhere. We need a smaller, nimble truck that can actually go up and down the windy roads, and it can get to these other sites where we know this service would be in high demand. And so the next step is budget approval, and I'm hoping that in the next budget process we will have approval to proceed with the procurement of a new truck. Expected to take 2 years to get a truck and to then fit it out to enable to have a toilet on board. So that means that the truck can stay for a longer period of time at different locations. It doesn't need to find somewhere where there's a public toilet, for example. It also reduces the type of licensing restrictions that are needed on such a large library truck as this. So we've got big plans on how to change the mobile library service. Our staff continue to evolve in how they offer services. One of the really big things is at the moment, because of the library management system that we use, staff have to be behind a desk to offer a service. We are now rolling out iPads to all staff members in libraries, and this is going to support the move to our new integrated library system, due to be implemented on the 24th of October. And I've got a slide on that next. And the new ILS enables mobile capability, which means staff will be able to offer any library service anywhere. So they can be at pop-ups and offer the whole range of services on their iPad. It's going to be an absolute revolution. We're doing some trials of it at the moment. It'll have all the corporate applications, just like a normal corporate device. And here is our new integrated library system. We are in the throes of testing at the moment. It will require a closure of every library on the 24th of October for our final go-live test of the entire network, which we already know will be successful. And then we're going to open on Friday the 25th. And we'll have our iPads ready, and all services will be able to be offered anywhere, anytime. It is going to really open up the library collection to our customers. It'll enable you to search across the entire collection via a new Gold Coast Libraries app. You'll be able to sign up incredibly easy online. You won't need to come into a library. And so you'll have My Account, and you'll be able to put in your preferences. So this will be a terrific advancement, and it'll really help us with the beginning of the next year in really finalising what has been a very large change program for Gold Coast Libraries. You may have seen some of the awareness campaigns that we run in the community to make sure they know the services that are available to the community. Some of those campaigns have been award-winning. You can see the When Men Read campaign, award-winning campaign. Men definitely have a different style of reading, which is really effective, that children love, and they are just some of the great images from that campaign. And of course, we will finish this huge ICT investment and our new ILS, but our journey, we continue to evolve, and I have just identified a couple of the change areas that we're either involved in now or about to embark on. So I really look forward to be able to coming back to you next year, because we're going to be testing and trialling even new RFID technology, so smart lockers, smart shelves, digital tables. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you about the design of the new mobile library. We're finalising new library designs for every library, and we'll be refurbishing them internally as we can. All of the future builds for libraries will obviously be incorporated in the Community Services and Facility Review project, because we need to look about how those libraries need to evolve. We're also testing and trialling integrated services. So as of next week, at Broadbeach Library, customer service is moving into the library, and they'll be offering those services from the counter. So it'll be really interesting to see how that test and trial goes, and then we'll be reporting back to see customers how they find that. We did do a test and trial at Southport when there was a refurb taking place of a building, and certainly customers really value the ability to get multiple services in the one location. And of course, libraries are predominantly located near good public transport routes and with car parking, and so they could avail themselves to car parking, and they could get a range of services. So it'd be really interesting to see how we go on that test and trial. And next year, we will have our requirement to complete a customer satisfaction survey. That's part of our funding obligations with the State Library of Queensland. And so a survey will go out to the community to rate their satisfaction with Gold Coast Libraries. So I think that's, in a nutshell, it was a big presentation.
Big nut. It's a very large nut.
I know, but I guess the diversity of the service is incredible. and it's about ensuring that your peoples understand the services that are available to them, and that we can bring the services out to the community.
That's great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Melinda. Did you get any questions about libraries? I've got Councillor Doran. I had a couple of questions, but let's go to you first, Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. There's been an increase I've observed at the Robina Library of hot desking for workers. Is that putting a bit of a strain or any strain on the current fit outs in our libraries, given the change of use of the library?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. No, we've been opening and welcoming our arms and encouraging city officers to come and work in the library facilities. They're able to book officers back of house. They're also able just to come to the front counter, get an induction and come back of house to use all the facilities. I mean, some back of house facilities are much larger than others, so we can take a lot more staff.
So, sorry, not so much staff, but the way customers are using the library, not so much to bring books out, but to hot desk and to work from the stations provided.
So suggesting that in your community, people are effectively using the library as a co-working space where they kind of share desks and just come work on their own businesses.
Yeah. They're often there talking, chatting, doing their work, which we encourage. Sometimes, people want a quiet space for study, so we do have designated spaces at designated times, and they're quiet spaces. We also want to look at quiet pods next year.
Go ahead.
So the Robina Library Auditorium Community Centre is a really important hub in my community, and much more frequented than I ever expected when I was elected. There has been some folks reach out to me of late with some concerns, especially I'm taking her name now, Jenny from our community, who had some concerns over the change to the hours of operation. Lattes in the morning is great, but her concern was cocktails in the evening, to use the metaphor. Can you give us some examples, some reason as to why that changed so the community can understand?
Yeah, so we were generally open between in the afternoons. We either closed at 5:30 or 6, depending on the library. Now we're closing at 5. When we look at the hour by hour and daily statistics, there's far more demand to come into the library in the morning, and also to make sure though that we can cater for people that are still working, is why we opened all the libraries for a late night at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. So it's really got to do with the data, the usage statistics, and how people use the libraries.
Go ahead.
Was there any consideration to bring the opening hours earlier, but leaving the closing hours to 5:30 or 6 o'clock? I'm saying it's a staffing allocation, it's a cost implication to it, but we are accommodating a need at the early part of the day, but we are, for those who might have been using that for after school study or after work study, we are sort of limiting those for what seems to be a cost saving, but this is a community service, so I just wanted to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, sure, Councillor. It's certainly not cost saving. It's about being responsive to customer demand. So there's a clear demand for the morning. The afternoons are a peak drop-off, and in fact Southport Library is the one that has stayed open till 6 p.m. because there is pure statistical data to demonstrate that it needs to stay open till 6. So it does, because there is so many students coming into that library after general school hours. So I mean, we are always quarterly refreshing our visitation data, our loan data and our usage data. Where we see that there is a increase in demand and we're needing to move people out of our libraries at a certain time and it's quite big, well, we always revise the hours depending on the community. So no change of hours is ever done without a lot of thorough analysis, and I can certainly provide you with demand analysis for your library.
Thank you. I think what I touched on at the start of my queries were around the other ways that people are using the library, not necessarily to take books out. So that loan data that might have been in the back end that might be diminishing, it might actually be people using the hot desking space in the afternoon rather than the actual hiring out of books. So is the department open to taking on community feedback around the change over time and re-looking at it in the future if there is a need to go back to the other trading hours.
Do you mean
the question is
closing at 5:30 instead of 5?
By what mechanism could a
Sure.
councillor advocate for a later closing time
Of course.
in one of the libraries? How would you prefer us doing that if we wanted to do that?
Well, we test and trial everything that we do based on evidence. So the change to hours happened a fortnight ago. We normally have 3 months for test and trial, and we look to see what the demand utilisation is. So certainly you could contact me, or you can contact me at any time, but we would normally give it 3 months.
Sounds like. Thank you. I hope that gives some direction. Councillor Curtis.
Thanks through you, Chair. First-term councillor, long-term fan of the library system. I'm privileged to have the mobile library in a station across the road from my house and have enjoyed that for the last decade. And I think it's brilliant, the service you provide. I just have 2 questions. The no need to renew, I was interested, is that because that's tied in a process that authenticates like through their licence getting renewed? Like, because I'm just seeing if people change their address and then how do we work out where they are if we've got unreturned items?
Yeah, so if you're a Gold Coast resident, you're able to have membership to the library, and you can have that membership for life unless you move. We run reports on a weekly basis to see if there are books that have not come back that are overdue, and so we contact customers to advise them, you know, you might have forgotten. Would you like to bring in your book? And so we just follow that process through. Sometimes people have just simply forgotten or they've run out of time and they go, oh, yeah, we have brought it back. And occasionally they might have lost that book. But on average, customers are very good on the Gold Coast and do return all of their library items.
Sure.
We also look to see when was the last time the person was active on their account. And so if they've been inactive for a period of time, we will also contact them with whatever details they've provided to go, are you still here?
But I was just thinking that the renewal process would have been the opportunity where we make sure that their contact details are up to date, where if we no longer have that as a process, is there...
Yeah, we still have that as a process. So, in fact, every time someone interacts with a staff member, we're asking to update their contact details. Once we have the new ILS and we have our mobile iPads, we'll actually be able to, do it with them or provide them the iPad to update, because we're very, very keen to make sure that we can, where possible, get email addresses and mobile numbers for customers so that we can keep communicating with them.
Sure, thank you. And one more through you, Chair. I was approached by a resident who claimed that she could no longer use her debit or credit card to top up her printing credit and needed to do that via an app or a computer. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's with an app at the moment. We actually have an innovation project which we are very close to being able to sign off and roll it out throughout the libraries, which will enable you to just use FPOS to top up your library credit.
Oh, so you will be able to go back to the use. Okay, great. I'll let her know. Thank you.
Very close.
That's awesome. I had a couple of questions. You touched on in one of your slides the local studies library's digitisation. So the historic stuff, half of it's digitised. Is there still a process of continuing to digitise older assets, or is that not something we're continuing to do?
No, I mean, we would prefer to digitise the entire collection. We're going to wait till we migrate to the new ILS. So we've paused it while we've been going through all of the change to processes that's required.
Yes. And
then we'll begin the process again next year.
Right.
We just haven't been able to do digitisation this year while we've gone through this project.
Of course. Part 2 of my question is you touched on library kiosks. So the library kiosks are those kind of mobile boxes with libraries. I've got one at Mudgerbach Community Centre, which is great. And heavily used. Often I'll come into work in the morning and people are kind of standing in front of it looking at the wall, and I'm like, what are you? Oh, you're looking at the library book. Do you mind me asking what they cost, and is there a plan to roll more of them out? Help me understand how that...
Yeah, they are considerably expensive. We were provided the funding through a COVID return to work grant, which enabled us to fund the kiosks that we have.
Right.
Again, it's interesting. The demand usage is not great.
Right.
It isn't as high as what we envisaged. That said, most of the kiosks are located in community centres or sporting areas where we believe there's people milling around which could take advantage. I think there's the opportunity to do a different type of unit around public transport. It's just going through that process to enable that to occur. But an average kiosk, just the hardware, which all needs to come into Australia, was over 80,000 a kiosk.
Wow.
And that's not even, that doesn't even bring in the cost for the IT connectivity, the need to make sure that they are safe, because that's another reason why those kiosks are located where they are, because they're not waterproof.
Yes.
And they're probably a little bit more susceptible to vandalism. Some other library services have built sort of a big facility around them, but that's very expensive, and we didn't think that that was prudent at the time. But I do think that having the ability to access the collection in different places would be well received by the community.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Councillor Wilkinson in a second. So there was talk at one point about the new Lower Beachmont Community Centre having one of those kiosks. Is that still on the cards?
Again, it's about needing to move one of the existing kiosks to go and service that area. Yeah.
Gotcha. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, firstly, Melinda, thank you for that presentation. That's just phenomenal. To know that our city has the second largest library service in the whole of Australia is just incredible. And I take my hat off to all our dedicated librarians for the work that they do in that respect. Big fan of the accessibility collection. My 13-month-old daughter has had plenty of time in both the Runaway Bay Library and the Helensvale Library, playing with a lot of the equipment and things in there. So, yeah, we certainly utilise that as a family. I wanted to touch a little bit on little libraries, just because I'm very hopeful in the near future my Labrador community will be acquiring one of these, just for clarity around, I guess, anyone wanting to know what constitutes for those particular books to go into those. Like, is it an end of, like, what? I don't think books, unless wear and tear is applied, like what is end of life? A book, you could have books that are 400 years old. Like,
after everyone's read it, it gets to the end of its life.
That's what I mean. So could you just give a bit of clarity on that for me, just so I'm aware?
There's different criterion for end of life for all the different types of collection. So, for example, for adult fiction, it'll be the number of times it's been borrowed, so actually loaned out. And if it's a hot read, so a really popular one, within about a month, you will see considerable wear and tear on that book. So, if any pages are stained, if you couldn't read your book in bed, we don't want it in the collection. It should be clean. It should be unstained from stuff. And should coffee, drinks, food. We would, when we check books back in and they're coming through the conveyor belt and then we're putting them onto the bins to go out and shelve, we do a visual inspection of the book. And if the book is not suitable to read on your bed, well, then it goes into one of our big bins, and then they get recycled. And then, depending on orders that are coming in through the community for books set free, we will then sort them into different categories, and then those books will be made available to different community groups, because online you can ask for books set free. So it's got to do with age, it's got to do with appearance, it's got to do with the number of loans, and also how often has that book, if that book has never been borrowed and it's been sitting on a shelf for years, it's obviously not wanted by the community.
Can I ask about the accessibility programs? You touched on the recent media around those accessibility kind of, the special collection. Is that just in some, it's only in a few of our places, or is it in all the libraries?
No, it's in all of the libraries except for Little Ormeau. which is our temporary library offering in the community centre. So you'll see the accessible collection everywhere, and we continue to add to that collection. Again, it's a really good test and trial of how the community is responding to having those items available. And what we're finding is exactly what you mentioned, Councillor, is that people are tending to actually engage with that collection on the floor in the library.
Yeah. Like playtime with their kid or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. There you go. Any other questions? Does anyone want to support libraries by noting the presentation? Whoa, there's a few bit of love there. Councillor Castro and Councillor Curtis got first and second on that. So Councillor Castro moved it, Councillor Curtis seconded it. They like libraries the best. And I'm assuming that's part of Councillor Castro's actually in the library. You know, we've got that room that Councillor Doran said is named, the archive area is named after him. Did you want to say a few words about libraries, Councillor Castro, now that I've appropriately heckled you?
Not necessarily about libraries, but about about the comments maybe that have been made in this committee today. But no, look, libraries have changed obviously a great deal, as we've just seen, and this city has always led from the front really when it comes to libraries. We've always been ahead of anyone else, and I think now we're even further ahead. Very, very proud of what our city libraries offer and how they continue to evolve. I've actually been involved in the When Men Read program.
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful program, and it's so important to try and encourage, you know, men, dads and granddads and uncles and whatever to get involved and read books to kids in their family, because not enough. There's not enough of it. So, but there's so many brilliant programs. But as I say, I've been involved in that one personally. It's a lovely program, and well done for everything you do. It's pretty hard to find anything that we can trash our libraries on. So it's
that's good.
And also the little libraries. Got a couple of those in. I don't know how many of you have actually got them in your parks and things, but yeah, they're just a beautiful little idea as well. People just go in and exchange books, and just so many wonderful things. I could wax lyrical forever, but I won't. So
thank you.
Well done. So,
that's great. I'm going to count that as closing. All those in favour of noting the presentation? The motion is carried.
Thank you very
Melinda,
much.
thank you so much. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we're going to take a short 7-minute little break. We've got another director coming in just to do a presentation and talk about finance as well, but I thought just quick toilet break now that we've been over 2 hours. So we're back at 11 o'clock. Kathy, whoever wants to introduce.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair. This is Hadley and Darren from our Vector Urban Pest and Biosecurity teams, and they're here to give us an update on our urban pest and biosecurity programs. Thanks.
Great.
Hadley, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillors. The purpose of this presentation today is to essentially introduce the Vector Urban Pest and Biosecurity team, what we do, and give some updates around that. So first up, I'm just going to walk you through the various teams that we have within the program. It's worth noting that this team, or the 6 teams, they generally operate on council land. They do some operations on public land, but generally on council land. And they're based out at Coombaba. We've got a depot out there. It's a fairly significant depot. And then, just running through the teams. In terms of the vector control team, I'll just go really quickly through first, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail later. But the vector control team, their 2 key deliveries are the aerial treatment program for larva sighting, and that's nothing to do with volcanoes. That's about larvae, that's mosquito larvae. And then the other key program that
was a good joke, Hadley. Sorry, none of us really responded. None of us responded the way I know that you wanted us to. It was a good joke.
Didn't feel the love.
It was a dad joke.
Well, it was a dad joke, and I just feel like some of us are still, it's a bit soon since Councillor Vorster left the chambers. He was the king of dad jokes, and so thank you. So let's just come back to the lava joke, and then we'll move on.
And the second key program is the ultra-low volume fogging program that is focused on adult mosquitoes. The second program is, or the second team, sorry, is the invasive mosquito project management team. They're really focused on surveillance of mosquitoes and monitoring mosquitoes. So that team really inform the treatment team. And then the other key program they run to is the exotic mosquito team, the exotic mosquito program, whereby they're constantly watching out for any new species of mosquitoes that are arriving on the Gold Coast that might be carrying various new diseases. Thirdly, we have the urban pest management program team, and they are really focused on, if you can think about your residential home and the treatments you might get on that annually. Well, that's what they're really focused on, cockroaches, rodents and things like that, and they operate within our facilities and buildings that council own. Then we have the biosecurity invasive animals team. They're really focused on invasive animal management. Biosecurity invasive plants team, they're obviously focused on invasive plant management. And then we have the fire ant management team. They are focused on fire ant surveillance, suppression, and high-value asset protection. I'm not going to go into the fire ant team in detail because I've obviously presented to you in May earlier in the year. However, happy to take questions on that team. Next slide is on the legislative background. So this is just going through where we take our directives from. So this is essentially why we exist. There's 2 key pieces of legislation. The first one being the Queensland Biosecurity Act 2014. Second one is the Queensland Public Health Act 2005. So in terms of the major one is the Biosecurity Act that we operate under. And the real key thing within the Biosecurity Act is what's called the General Biosecurity Obligation. And all landholders have a General Biosecurity Obligation, and obviously council do too, to manage invasive animals, invasive plants and fire ants. And so that's essentially why our biosecurity team exists. And then the other key thing under the Biosecurity Act is the fact that local governments have to maintain a biosecurity plan, and so we have our Gold Coast Biosecurity Management Plan. Then under the Public Health Act, we as a local government have obligations to manage mosquitoes, and we also have obligations to manage designated pests such as rats and mice and cockroaches. Again, very much focused on public land. So now I'll go into a little bit more detail around the programs that we run. So starting off with mosquito monitoring. So we have 88 trap sites across the Gold Coast that trap mosquitoes. We have traps for both adult mosquitoes and also larvae. And this is generally carried out throughout the mosquito breeding season, and that's through the warmer months from mid-spring right through to autumn. We do monitor during winter, but the program just slows right down. And they're really monitoring number of species, number of adult species, number of species, and also, they're monitoring the numbers of mosquitoes, and then they're also monitoring the types of species. Then obviously, as I mentioned before, they monitor exotic species too, and that's to make sure that we're not getting new species of mosquitoes coming in to the Gold Coast. Now I've got a video here, hopefully I can play it. This is from earlier this year. We obviously had a really terrible mosquito season this year, and this is just going to show some of the larvae within the northern salt marsh. Oh, thank you. So really prolific larvae in the northern salt marsh. And you can imagine all those could potentially hatch if we didn't treat them. So next up is the vector mosquito control program that we run. And so really focused on larviciding, the larviciding program. So that obviously is managing mosquito larvae, and the key service that we provide there is an aerial treatment across the northern salt marshes, and the application is by helicopter with a boom, and it really is a preemptive treatment. And essentially what's happening there is they are distributing a certain type of, bear with me, insect growth regulator. So that's really targeting mosquito larvae. So what we're trying to do is not affect any other species. It's very much targeted at those species. We have the ultra-low volume ULV misting program, or a lot of people call it fogging, and that's a scheduled program generally every year, but also when we get really heavy years with a lot of mosquitoes, then it becomes very much reactive when we get a lot of customer requests and councillor requests. And then finally we have biological control. So this is a program that we run each year where we breed native rainbow fish, and you can see the tanks there out of our Coombaba depot. It's on the photo on your left. And so we breed those fish at certain times of the year, and we can give those fish away to landholders who might have dams and ponds with mosquito issues. Moving on, we have here, so this video I'm about to show you, this is our helicopter aerial treatment. This video was taken earlier in the year by me, so I'm the cameraman, and it's taken in the Coomera Northern Salt Marsh. And this helicopter, that'll cover over 2,000 hectares in one treatment round, so that might be over 2 or 3 days. And as I said before, they're using insect growth regulator to very much target mosquito larvae. And then one of the interesting things when I was out on site that the team does is they put down what are called water sensitive cards, and so they might put that in a line right across the salt marsh, and what that does is it measures the application rate of the helicopter, so that we, what we contract the helicopter to do, we are proving that that's what's happening. So there's the video there going. Next up, we have the Urban Pest Program. So this program is really focused on treating city-owned facilities for cockroaches, spiders, rodents, etc. As I said before, you can think of it as the type of service that you might get in your residential home annually, and it's fulfilling our obligation under the Public Health Act. The team also does manage other species, other native species on council land, such as snakes and swooping birds, but they don't use lethal control because these species are managed under a different act called the Nature Conservation Act, so really focused on relocating these species if they become a hazard to our community, such as snakes and swooping birds. Next up is moving on to biosecurity, so our biosecurity service. So this includes invasive plant management, invasive animal management, and fire ant management. In our service, the services are mainly focused on council land, as I keep going on about, and it is a requirement for all landholders to manage biosecurity risk on their land. As I mentioned before, I'm going to keep saying it, that's called our General Biosecurity Obligation, or GBO. The reason I keep saying it is because that's a big focus for us. It really is our operational focus, is on council land. And so here you can see we have our top 10 species for eradication. So that's an excerpt straight out of our biosecurity plan. And you can see there that we have fire ants at the top, we have red-eared slider turtles, we have the European rabbit, and we have a fair few plant species there too. So it's important to note here that that's just eradication. We do obviously manage a lot of other species, but not necessarily for eradication. And so these, while they do take up a significant part of our operational resources, they don't take up all of our operational resources. And that's largely because we work with other organisations such as Biosecurity Queensland, the Moreton Darling Downs Rabbit Board, and the National Fire Ant Eradication Program. So, we work in collaboration with those organisations to manage some of these species. So other invasive species are managed for containment and asset protection, so that's quite different to eradication. So eradication is obviously focused on getting rid of a species, whereas containment and asset protection are more about managing those species. So other species that we manage include feral deer, feral cats, foxes, wild dogs, and feral pigs. And the reason that these aren't necessarily, for eradication is because of the nature of how they are. They're very mobile and they don't recognise property boundaries, so they're a lot more difficult to manage. Next up, I'll put a separate slide for feral deer management because we're increasingly getting a feral deer issue on the Gold Coast with 4 species identified. That's chittle, red deer, rusa, and fallow deer. And feral deer are posing an increasing risk to motorists. That's through vehicle strike and impacts to native vegetation. As can be seen in the image there, I understand that's a fallow deer stag, and it's stripping a eucalyptus tree, so quite often they will actually kill trees within our natural areas. So managing feral deer is a significant challenge right across Australia. I attended the Australasian Pest Management Conference last week, and feral deer was very much a hot topic right across Australia, and this is mainly due to, I mentioned before, cross-tenure movement, so they don't recognise property boundaries, difficulty to catch and control, and very difficult to manage without significant resources. So what we do plan to do is we plan to develop a Gold Coast deer management strategy that's going to aim to reduce feral deer numbers significantly on the Gold Coast. So we're aiming to develop that over the next financial year, or this financial year, sorry. As I mentioned before, I attended the Australasian Vertebrate Pest Conference last week, and I met the National Deer Management Program Coordinator, and we're going to work closely with them. We're going to work closely with Biosecurity Queensland, with natural resource management groups and other groups to develop this strategy. But in the meantime, we do plan to start with baseline surveys to understand the size and scale of the issue. And to do that, we'll be using thermal drones to gather data, and that's going to be starting in the coming months. In terms of species prioritisation, we often get asked how do we actually prioritise the management of species here on the Gold Coast. So what we do is we start with the Biosecurity Act that has a whole lot of lists of invasive species. And then what we do is we take that list and we perform a localised risk management assessment and feasibility exercise against those lists and develop the Gold Coast Biosecurity Plan. And this plan prioritises species for all risk owners. So it's really important to note here that it's not just a plan for council, it's a plan for right across the Gold Coast for all biosecurity risk owners, such as businesses and landholders, etc., and for council. One of the tools that we use during the process is called the General Invasion Curve. So you can see that graph there, that's called the General Invasion Curve. And that's used Australia-wide to try and classify species into how they should be managed. And so on the x-axis you can see is time, and on the y-axis represents the distribution of a species, or you could say the population size. So if an area is occupied is low, then generally the management objective would be prevention or eradication of the species. But when populations are larger and growing, containment or stopping the growth might be more of an appropriate control. And then finally, where the population is spread entirely over an area, might be more asset protection is a much more appropriate action. And along the bottom there is a really important box too. It shows the general return on investment for each action. So best bang for your buck is preventing an invasive species from establishing initially, followed by eradication, then containment, and finally asset protection gives us, I guess you could say, the worst return on investment when species are entirely ubiquitous across a landscape. In terms of the Gold Coast Pest Fishing Classic, so this is an event we run annually, usually in November, and it really does help out. It's a popular event, and it really helps out with catching pest fish. So the event encourages fishers to catch pest fish across the Gold Coast. A couple of stats there from last year. We had 828 kgs of pest fish removed from our waterways. That's almost a tonne of pest fish. We had a social media campaign that reached over 200,000 people, and we had over 1,700 people registered for the event. And what we do is we do some restocking of native fish after the event too, which is a real help. And in terms of what's next for our program, well, we have the Biosecurity Plan 2025 to 2032. So that's currently, we've drafted that, and that will be something to look forward to for councillors next month. We'll be bringing that to you next month in draft form, and then once after it's passed through council, it will go out to public consultation, and then finally early next year we'll be bringing it back to council for sign-off. Then we have, what we're looking at is data-driven modelling for mosquito breeding conditions. So what this is we've obviously got years and years of data for mosquitoes. And so what we want to do is compare that against environmental conditions like weather conditions, and understand whether there's a relationship there between, you know, the years that we have really, really big breeding seasons and what the environmental conditions were during that time. So we're working with Griffith University on that. We want to review the mosquito adulterating ULV program just to make sure that we're best practice in that area. And then finally, we've got a whole lot of stuff happening in the drone space. So we're going to be using drones this financial year for fire ant bait treatment, mosquito larvicide aerial treatment, and feral deer monitoring. So that photo there, you can see we had a bit of a demonstration by a drone company, and they were spreading fire ant baits, and it was really impressive actually. So yeah, focused on areas that are hard to treat by manual means. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
So just I might kick off. There's no doubt going to be a community interest in the council spreading fire ant baits by drone. That's going to raise some interesting queries that will probably come through Divisional Councillor's office. What sort of assurances can you provide us, or information can you provide us about how we might manage some of those queries about us using baits through drones or distributing bait through drones?
Through the chair, what we're doing is a really detailed risk management assessment right now, actually, before we kick off operations. So that's going to be identifying any major risks. One of the key things is making sure that the operator has their CASA license, essentially, because if we understand that they have their license, we know that they have to go through a rigorous process to manage risk. But however, we're going to have our own risk management process over the top of that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that in a lot of feedback forums, social media, things like that, people are a bit sceptical of the use of fire air bait in public places and how we notify people about that. What sort of mechanisms will we be introducing to make sure people are aware that this is going on in parks and places near them?
Through the chair, what we can do is we can certainly provide information on that before we go out and do operations. So yes, we can certainly provide that information to the community, distribute that information. Also, it's worth mentioning the areas that we're going to be treating, they won't be really public areas. They'll be largely areas that can't be accessed by our teams currently.
Yeah.
So they'll be in places like...
where the topography is such you can't get a vehicle in.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Awesome. I had another couple of questions that relate to weeds and pests that aren't declared, that aren't part of our strategy. We've touched on this before. From time to time, we get queries from members of the community who say we want to get rid of giant rat's tail grass or giant devil's fig or these kind of quite difficult weeds that are in our community areas and often private areas. What's a great response that you might provide to a divisional councillor who wanted to respond to people about those undeclared pests and what we do about them?
Through the chair, I might pass you over to Darren for that one, if that's all right.
Thanks, Hadley. Through you, Mr. Chair. As Hadley said, we're mainly focused on council land. Weeds are cross-tenure in more than just private and public. There's a lot of different areas in council that deal with weeds and deal with them differently. So through the presentation you just saw, you can see that we're focused on weeds listed in the Biosecurity Act. You're asking about weeds that are sort of maybe not listed or they're listed but they're low priority. There are other areas in council, for instance, Natural Areas Conservation Unit and Parks Maintenance that may treat those weeds. So it's, I wouldn't assume that they don't get any attention at all through council because there's a lot of different areas in council that do treat weeds and they're not necessarily focused on the Biosecurity Act. But from our point of view, I think that we discussed partnerships with community groups. I think that's a good idea. Certainly open to that. I think that's a space that we can move into moving forward. Of course, there's always resourcing issues and funding around that sort of thing, but I think that's a good way to move into that sort of space.
That's great. Any other questions from you guys? Councillor Button and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through your chair, the feral deer issue, is that localised to the Gold Coast or it's a growing southeast Queensland deer problem?
Through the chair, yeah, it's absolutely a growing problem, not even just in southeast Queensland, right across the country. It's across, many different species of deer too.
Go ahead, yeah, please.
So is that, I suppose, that addressing that challenge, is that linking with state and perhaps federal levels around how we manage that?
Through the chair, correct. Federal level, state level, and local groups like natural resource management groups. There's a whole lot of people that need to come together to work on this, including landowners, and particularly landowners that hold areas like large areas of forest. So yeah, it's going to be a big part of the strategy that I mentioned in the presentation. Is going to be around leadership and working groups.
So there is a national feral deer strategy, and I've had obviously I look after the whole southwest, so it's probably a significantly greater problem with feral deer than some other councillors might. Definitely more than Division 10, where there's not too many deer in Cephas Paradise and Broadbeach and such, but there's heaps out my way. Yeah, well, except at Christmas time, of course. Santa. We just want to make all the kids watching the reindeer that Santa. They're always welcome in Division 10 as well as every division. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for that. But there's definitely a national strategy that we have, until now, probably not collaborated with very well. And to be fair, over the last 3 months at least, and under Hadley's leadership with his team, there's a much greater interest and capacity to engage collaboratively with that national program and make sure that we deal with that problem here. But keep going.
Just final question. You talked about that it's also the responsibility of landowners. I was just, if there's non-compliance there, is a penalty, obviously, if landowners,
Are you suggesting there might be a landowner who is letting deer proliferate on their property, and
what would be
a penalty that we could apply?
Yes,
it's a good question.
Through the chair, so we do have obligations under our GBO, not necessarily under our GBO, but under the Biosecurity Act, to do compliance for feral deer. We don't hold that responsibility within our business unit. We work with planning and regulation and local laws to work on that issue. It's not funded well at the moment, so it is a big challenge for us. So, it's a work in progress.
Maybe if we issued more fines, we would have a revenue source that could help deal with the problem more widely. Who would have thought? Councillor Wilkinson, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. And mine actually follows, I guess, a little bit on from Councillor Martin's to a degree. Obviously, today, thank you for the presentation today. We've focused a lot about public land because obviously that's the key that we're responsible for in that respect of land owners and management. For constituents that do say, or residents that raise concerns about neighbouring properties and they come to, say, their local councillor, can you just give a bit of clarity as far as the process that the council plays, I guess, in that respect of things? Like, how do we, as far as compliance goes, how do we assist people making sure that they, I guess, get the concerns that they have towards maybe their neighbouring resident addressed in a way, I guess, that, and what are we responsible for, I guess, as a council? Do we just kind of say, well, it's your land, you guys sort it out, or how do we actually work through that process with them, I guess?
Through the chair, that's a really good question. So I guess I tried to answer it in the last answer, but I guess the key thing is that we're not really resourced well at the moment to address that issue. What we would like to do is perhaps fund a new position that could work with landholders, and that might be an engagement position. But also I've been in discussions with local laws to the manager that manages that department to try and understand whether we can get a compliance officer in the space too. So there's a couple of tools that we can use. There's obviously the engagement side of things. So we go to the landholder and say, hey, look, these are the obligations. Can you work with us? And then there's the more kind of blunt tool, which is compliance and enforcement. So, but as I said, we're not well resourced in that space yet. However, through the strategy, I hope to build that area up.
So I want to address that more directly. I think what Hadley might be trying to say is that the current team work really hard, but they're primarily focused on their obligations under the Act to work on pests on council land, and there isn't yet an external employee who works on those projects outside the council reserves or council areas. Pending, I had a meeting with the team yesterday and we talked about a strategy coming up that's actually going to propose that we start helping the community because of the, pests are ambivalent about property boundaries. But if we can help, private property owners manage pests on their property, we actually reduce our obligations on our own property because, we're actually just reducing pests in total. I don't know if that kind of answers your question as well, but yeah. Did you have any more? Great. Awesome. Any other questions about pests, biosecurity? That's great. I'm happy to move that the presentation be noted. As I said at the start of the meeting, each of these presentations that we're doing in this committee is just to give, particularly the new councillors, a bit of perspective on some of the broad, different things that this committee addresses. Whilst we're not acting on things and making decisions about actual activity, it just hopefully is giving you a better understanding of just a sheer variety of different things we do. And so I just want to thank Hadley and the team for coming and present about pests today. It was less cool than libraries, but still pretty cool. And my understanding is your group's the only group that has got guns as well. You're who with licensed firearms.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct, but we don't like to advertise it.
No, of course not. No, too late now. So I'm going to move it. Councillor Martin's going to second it. All those in favour? That motion is carried.
And just for through the chair, just for the councillors, the Pest Fishing Classic used to be called Tilapia Busters for the older people who have been around for a while and participated. But we try and get more than tilapia now. It's another jab at Councillor Castro.
So, do you want me asking, while we're just informally chatting the Pest Fishing Clinic, when is the Pest Fishing Classic?
In November.
In November this year. And so budding fisher people from our community can prepare some time in November to catch fish, and we'll try and hit the ton.
Correct. Yeah, hopefully
our aim
over
is to
a
hit the ton.
That's
Let's
right.
do it. All right, great. Let's move on. So the same team is going to address the last item on the agenda, which is relating to some requests for funding to deal with red imported fire ants. And there isn't a presentation, but my understanding is that Councillor Doran had just a few questions that I hope that Hadley could field those, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. The report asks us to give support to the LGAQ to request some extra funding to help with obligations of council to address fire ants in our area. The query I have around this is it says in the report that changes are effective from 1st of July, changes the way in which these are addressed. And so if I summarise it, could you correct me or not? It's a pre-July 1, the NFAEP would be responsive and responsible for treatments where the nests are found, and then post-July, when they're alerted to it, it's now the responsibility of City Council to address those.
Through the chair, pre-1 July, we still had our general obligations, but the treatment chemicals were actually provided by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to provide said chemicals. So we're basically asking LGAQ, because there's a number of other councils that are caught up in this, everyone has to provide their own chemicals now to treat. So we're going to ask for the government to provide money to councils to buy the chemicals to do the treatment.
Yeah. So the new changes from July 1 put a cost burden onto councils that wasn't there before July 1, and so the request for funding isn't to then take on more responsibilities to address the responsibility cost burden that's been placed on us by the change since July 1.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Perfect. Are you happy to move the item? Yeah, thanks, Councillor Doran. We don't want it to lapse for want of a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Gosh, that was so close. I don't think do you want to speak to it at all?
Yeah, just briefly. So, last report we had was that fire ants have now encroached on Division 9 and Division 11. So, I'm particularly interested to see and monitor how that is looking in my area and how we're responding to it. And so the questions that I raised with regards to the funding here was to make sure that we're not taking on more than our responsibility, that we're addressing the issue with purpose and seriousness, and that we're not out of pocket for undertaking those responsibilities. So I appreciate the answer to the queries. Best of luck with these. Keep on top of them, please, and thank you.
That's great. Debate closed. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Is there any general business people came with today? It's a lot less exciting than governance. All right, meeting closed at 11:35. Thanks, guys.